a brand new Soviet unit, the 50th Rifle Division, and we like to emphasize authenticity in all things we do. We wrote an extensive, I believe it's 17 or 18-page authenticity guide detailing all the way down to the cloth we'd like our tunics to be made from. So if you're up for that, if you like that sort of thing, and using modern historiographical methods to describe the Great Patriotic War, we're for you. We're all about that. So come join the 50th Rifle Division. Contact us on Facebook. We have two Facebook pages actually. One is the 50th Rifle Division, and the other one is the 50th Rifle Division Recruiting and Information. We use the one page for official business, the other page is for dissemination of authenticity guidelines and things like that. Thank you.
I'm portraying 1st Russian Women's Battalion of Death. We were created in 1917, so late World War I. It was an all-women's battalion created by Maria Boshkaryova. We fought under the provisional government with Kerensky. We only lasted until the fall of 1917 when the Bolshevik Revolution happened and we were disbanded. And some of us did fight with the White Army.
Привет, товарищи. I'm portraying a member of the Red Army during the Civil War period in Russia, so that would have been 1917 to 1921. So just after the Bolshevik Revolution and then into the formation of the Soviet Union in 1924. So specifically I'm portraying a member of the 1st Red Konarmia, or Cavalry Army, under General Semyon Budyonny, under People's Commissariat Joseph Stalin, during the invasion of Poland in 1920. So the goal of that operation was to advance communism into Europe by means of invasion of Poland and then eventually linking up with German communism in Berlin. However, this was stopped crucially at the Battle of Warsaw and also at the Battle of Komarów, which was the largest cavalry battle and the last cavalry battle in world history. The unit that I'm portraying was mostly made up of Kuban and Don Cossacks who, more or less out of a sense of adventure, joined up in the Red Army. They weren't very politically enlightened, that was more for the commissars to figure out, but mostly they were in it for the loot and the plunder and the fast action and the battles with the Poles, which they traditionally had been in conflict with. So it was a very offensive war, the Polish Bolshevik War. Fast-moving, armored cars, armored trains, cavalry armies. It was very much an old-school war fought in post-World War I Europe. Now we move to 1939.
So moving forward, we can see the benefits that 20 years of industrial progress has made. We go from a man with no shoes, no socks, to a very modern, well-equipped army equipped with semi-automatic rifles and a plethora of modern equipment. However, that equipment was led very poorly and led to a disastrous defeat in 1941 at the hands of the invading fascists. However, the Red Army recovers and will go on to triumphantly defeat them and save the world from Nazi terror. We are all members of the 50th Rifle Division. We just put this little display together. So we move on from 1939 to a sailor in the dark depths of 1941.
Touching on what he said in 1941, the need for as many guys on the front was pretty apparent due to their pretty disastrous defeat. And so they pressed everybody into service. So here we see a more modern weapon for on the equipment timeline here, the PPSH-41. It's a submachine gun, 7.62 by 25. Has drum magazine, stick magazine. They're pretty fantastic weapons, and they were very well favored by not only Red Army soldiers, but just about everybody that fought the Red Army.
Yes, and then from there, the war continues. The uniform designs of 1939 with this wonderfully bright raspberry collar and these impractical old pouches would give way to a more traditional look, oddly enough. With the man over here, is a Model 43 of Gimnastroika. It has a very Tsarist influence, as we saw from our Konarmia man. They adopted this later in the war to increase national fervor and patriotism, and this style of uniform remained in Soviet service until the late 1960s, 1969 actually. So after that though the war ends, the Red Army is triumphant, world saved from fascism, while the Soviet Union continues to develop. So in the middle 1970s, late 1970s, the Soviet Union has to invade Afghanistan for a plethora of reasons, protecting a local communist insurgency is one of them. So they intervened with the Red Army. They were at war again. And we have our men here who portray that, and I'll let them get to the specifics of what they're wearing.
Alright, well I'm representing the 354th VDV Bagram, circa 1988-89, which is the pullout of Soviet Afghanistan. Now, the Soviets went into Afghanistan in 1979 at the request of the Afghanistan government, which was pro-Soviet, to fight terrorists in the country, which were later backed by the United States government, which then turned against us.
Speak up a little bit.
Right now I'm a traffic regulator, so what I do is I'm just there directing traffic, drivers of class, that kind of thing. Here we have a member of the Russian.
This is the 40th Army from Afghanistan. They're one of the largest army units in the war at that time. They were the main U.S. or regular army forces that were there in Afghanistan from about 1982 to about the end of the war in February 1989 when they left. You have the standard kit here, Afghanka they call it, which is a lighter uniform, more of a NATO pattern, which is meant to be a little bit more modern from the older front button collar tunic similar to what he had. You've also got the lifchik, it's called, which is a slang term for a bra, popularized for the front-wearing style of this mag pouch. PKM, which would have meant that he was a machine gunner for his squad or on a vehicle at the time, and flares as well for tactical use in combat, and a helmet with a burlap cover over it made from the hood of whatever uniforms they were wearing at the time to keep reflection on the helmet down. Now, I represent the Airborne forces shortly after that time period during the transition of about 1989 to about 1993. The Soviet Union went through, of course, a massive array of economic developments, and it eventually imploded on itself, and the Soviet Union ceased to exist on Christmas Day of 1991. This uniform, known as TTSCO, was the first attempt at the Russian military to wear a common day-to-day camouflage uniform that wasn't an oversuit, that wasn't special to combat environment. And the TTSCO, as it was called, was worn as a common uniform with special forces initially, special forces including ones like myself, the Airborne, and later on from the Airborne you move into standard issue across the board. And this uniform continued to see service into the early 90s and the war in Chechnya in 1994 to 1996. And moving on, there were 2 or 3 more camouflage patterns that took place until the end in Crimea in current day, at the end of the timeline as we have.